imagine your radio, maybe your phone, picking up whispers, but not from a broadcast tower, right? From somewhere completely unexpected.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the really intriguing idea at the heart of our deep dive today. We're looking at Leonard Lander's book, Beyond the Dial, and his whole investigation into, well, what's called the electronic voice phenomenon, EVP.
Right. And Lander's work, it really digs into whether we can use everyday technology, things like old tape recorders, even modern computers to capture sounds or images, maybe even text messages that seem to come from, well, beyond our normal reality.
It's like seeing your phone or your laptop in a totally new light, isn't it? A really unusual one.
Definitely.
So, okay, in this deep dive, we're going to unpack what EVP is all about based on what Lander found. We'll look at what it claims to be, how people have tried using tech, everything from those old radios right up to today's computers to try and make contact.
And some of the theories around it, which get pretty fascinating.
Oh, yeah. And we're going to try and break it down simply. So, it makes sense whether you're deep into this stuff already or completely new to it.
And it's important, I think, to say up front that when Lander talks about EVP, he's using it quite broadly. It's not just about hearing voices.
Right.
In his book, EVP can mean any audio, any picture, even written text that people think is communication coming through.
Yep.
Well, unconventional means. Possibly using electronic devices.
Yeah, and you might hear the term ITC nowadays, right? Instrumental transcommunication.
Exactly. That's the more modern term for using gadgets for this. But like Lander points out, the basic question is still the same, whether it's an old valve radio or a brand new PC. Why would these normal everyday devices suddenly become pathways for this really unusual communication?
It's a huge question. Did Lander offer any initial thoughts on that? Any clues?
He throws out a couple of ideas that really make you think. One is quite practical. He points out that lots of these devices have speakers. And a speaker, technically, can be wired in reverse to act like a microphone. So the potential for these things to both send and receive signals, it's kind of built in.
Oh, that's clever. The speaker as microphone idea. Neat bit of reverse engineering, almost.
Right.
But then he takes a bigger leap, doesn't he?
He does. He gets into speculation about space people, as he puts it, maybe testing out different frequencies.
Testing frequencies, like for what?
Well, almost like they're doing a sound check, before some potential major global broadcast where they might try to reach everyone through any device that can pick up a signal. It's a very grand idea.
Wow, yeah. That definitely sparks the imagination.
Yeah.
Now, Lander also talks about how the messages people supposedly got through EVP seem to change over time. Can you walk us through that?
Sure. According to the research he looked at, back in the early days, say mid-20th century, the reported EVPs were often just single words, sometimes even in different languages mixed together.
Just single words. Huh.
Then, in what he sort of terms the middle period, maybe mid-70s to mid-80s, the messages apparently got longer, clearer, usually just in one language.
Okay. Becoming more coherent.
And then more recently, there are these claims of people receiving entire computer files, like full text documents transmitted electronically.
Whoa. From single words to whole documents. That's quite an evolution. It almost sounds like the communication itself is developing, getting more sophisticated.
That's certainly one way you could look at it. Lander himself, he concludes that whatever the source is, EVP seems to be paranormal.
Paranormal, meaning?
Meaning it's not just a glitch in the machine or something purely psychological in the person hearing it. He really emphasizes this idea of a strange interaction happening between the electronics and the mind of the person doing the experiment.
Okay, that's where it gets really interesting for me. This interaction between electronics and the mind. So what are the big theories trying to explain that connection? Where are these voices or images supposedly coming from?
Well, Lander goes into a couple of the main theories often discussed. One is what's called the intelligent database theory.
Intelligent database? That sounds intriguing.
The idea here is that EVP might involve interacting with forces or intelligences that aren't physical anymore. Maybe like accessing a vast collection of memories or consciousnesses from people who've lived before.
So like tapping into a spiritual internet where past lives and thoughts are just floating around.
That's maybe a simple way to put it, yeah. The idea is our questions, maybe even just our thoughts, could trigger responses from this database, making it seem like a conversation.
Okay. What's the other main theory then?
The other big one Lander presents is the experimenter projection theory. This suggests that the EVP phenomena might actually be created unconsciously by the minds of the people involved in the experiment.
Oh, hang on. So it could be us making the voices. Like our own subconscious broadcasting somehow.
Exactly. This theory proposes that our subconscious minds, maybe through abilities like psychokinesis, mind over matter, some kind of remote influence, might actually be altering the magnetic fields on the tape or the digital file, creating these voice patterns. Lander even brings up Ted Sirios as an analogy.
Ted Sirios, the guy who supposedly put images on film just by thinking. Thoughtography.
That's the one. So a similar idea, the mind directly influencing a recording medium.
Wow. That's mind-bending. The thought that we could be unknowingly influencing our tech like that. Now, Lander's book also gets into specific experiments and observations, right? What are some examples?
Yeah, one really interesting one is Professor Suzuki's helmet experiment. He actually designed this special helmet with sensors to measure brain activity during EVP attempts.
A helmet for EVP?
Yeah.
Okay. What did they find?
They reportedly found a specific brainwave frequency, 34.5 hertz, was particularly active. And this activity was strongest in certain parts of the brain areas 7, 8, and 10, apparently.
34.5 hertz. That's very specific. It makes you wonder if there's a certain mental state or focus that maybe facilitates this?
It certainly points that way. Lander also makes an interesting connection. He notes that the higher TV channels, the UHF bands,
use the same range of frequencies that are also used for aircraft landing systems. Just this little overlap between everyday tech and the frequencies being explored here.
It does blur the lines, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Between the mundane and the mysterious. Now, Lander also talks about some pretty far out theoretical concepts, like the interpenetration of separate dimensions. Can you break that down for us? What does that mean in this context?
Okay, so this idea basically is that different levels of reality or dimensions might not be totally separate boxes. Under certain conditions, they might actually interact or overlap.
Interact how?
Well, the thought is that our consciousness might be able to sort of access or enter what people sometimes call the astral plane, or maybe even higher dimensions, and these non-physical realms could then somehow influence our physical world.
Like a doorway opening up between realities. And things can slip through sometimes. That's the general concept, yeah. And Lander suggests that when these unworldly things manifest in our reality, they often take forms we can kind of grasp. Things like aliens, or maybe mythical creatures like yetis, or even images in our dreams.
Right, like our minds try to make sense of the completely unfamiliar by putting it into a familiar category, seeing a weird shadow and calling it a ghost, maybe.
Exactly. He even mentions H.P. Lovecraft, the horror writer, as maybe someone who was particularly sensitive to these kinds of interdimensional whispers, so to speak.
Interesting connection. And he talks about dreams, too, right? As a potential point of contact.
Yes, he points out that dreaming is something we all do. Regardless of our waking intellect or status, we all enter that dream state. He proposes that maybe sleep is a natural bridge, a time when our conscious and subconscious minds meet, and potentially where contact with these other worlds is easier.
And he adds that our own beliefs, our skepticism even, could act like a filter, stopping us from perceiving these other realities. That's a powerful thought. That just not believing could be a barrier.
It is. He even speculates that beings from other planets or dimensions might exist on these other levels and could be behind phenomena like radar ghosts, those unexplained blips air traffic controllers see, and maybe the whole UFO mystery. But he does warn against simplistic explanations.
Right. It's probably not just little green men. It could be something far more complex, maybe beyond our current science. Lander also brings it back to the natural world, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And our own innate abilities.
He does. He argues that many creatures, humans included, are probably capable of sensing much more than mainstream science currently gives us credit for. Things like, precognitive dreams or that skin sight phenomenon some people report. And he suggests that maybe EVP is just another way, a technological way, perhaps, to tap into this wider range of perception that we might naturally possess.
So maybe EVP isn't totally out there, but potentially an extension of senses we already have.
Yeah.
Just amplified or accessed through technology.
That seems to be his viewpoint. He also touches on something relevant today, the increasing electromagnetic smog around the Earth. All the radio leakage, projects like HARP.
Right.
He wonders if this electromagnetic environment might somehow be influencing EVP, or maybe even be influenced by it. He brings in quotes from Raymond Cass and theories from people like Wilhelm Reich and Trevor James Constable here.
It's like we're creating this giant electronic soup, and maybe it's stirring things up, creating pathways we didn't intend.
Oh.
Now, Lander's book isn't just theory, it's packed with personal stories, too. What are some of the really standout accounts he shares?
One that really jumps out is his own experience involving someone named Harry Roadnight. and a device called the trapezodron.
The trapezodron.
Sounds intense.
It does. Lander describes being given this purple liquid to drink before Road fired up the machine. He talks about seeing flashes of light, hearing high-pitched sounds, and then seeing these strange, smoky shapes appearing on a lens, sometimes forming into faces.
Wow, a purple drink, flashing lights. Sound like something out of a sci-fi film. Did he hear anything? Yes, he describes faint, crackling voices, seeming to come from all around him and inside his head at the same time, speaking languages he didn't know but sounding amplified somehow. He even remembers making out bits of sentences.
And
Then he says the screen he was watching started to shimmer like water, and he felt this urge to put his hands through it. He claims he actually touched something cold and electrical on the other side. After that, he apparently passed out and woke up with Road Knight holding him.
my goodness. That's an incredibly intense experience. Purple liquid, lights, voices, touching something otherworldly. It definitely sounds unearthly, as he puts it. He also tried something with an old TV later on, didn't he?
Yes, a bit different, but still strange. He talks about tuning an old TV to static, just snow, and on certain nights seeing faint, silvery images of what he called cloud people.
Cloud people.
Yeah, he said they had odd, metallic-sounding voices that seemed to come directly from their mouths, not the TV speaker, and they repeated phrases about focusing your in-being towards the microphone and mentioned an electrified sky.
Cloud people, with metallic voices from TV static. The imagery in these stories is just so bizarre and vivid, it really makes you wonder. The book also touches on some historical things, like the Neptunus circuit during World War II.
Right, Lander mentions this briefly. It was apparently a secret network of illegal wireless radio stations in England and France used by the Allies against the Germans. He presents it as an example of using unconventional radio for important clandestine communication.
Shows people were pushing the boundaries of radio even back then. He also mentions the Norfolk Mountain Rescue Service. That sounds like an unusual name for this kind of research group.
It does, doesn't it? Lander says he joined this secretive, little-known British group in '85, focused on esoteric research. He describes them doing experiments with modified TVs and phones connected to special antennas called Mobius strip aerials.
A Mobius strip antenna. That's the shape with only one side, right?
Exactly. The idea, apparently, was that this weird shape might somehow focus or interact with psychic energies. They called antennas like this occult transducers. They also reportedly used signal boosters and even things like bat detectors to listen for really high-frequency sounds, ultrasonic stuff.
Mobius strips and bat detectors.
Yeah.
That's a unique toolkit. Really shows the creative, almost bricolage approach people took. Now, a key piece of old tech was the vacuum tube, or valve. Lander seems to think these were pretty important for EVP.
He does. He explains how they work electrons flowing in a vacuum controlled by signals, and how adding a grid could amplify those signals. Lander suggests that Road Knight and another researcher believed that, well, strange beings from other dimensions could actually influence that electron flow inside the tubes.
So the tubes themselves might have been inherently more sensitive to these subtle influences, almost like a better antenna for psychic energy or voices.
That seems to be the suggestion. He even tells this really bizarre story about the Dutch army supposedly bulldozing thousands of cigar-shaped vacuum tubes in a psychic warfare experiment.
Wait, what? Bulldozing valves? Why?
The claim was it was an attempt to stop UFO sightings. It really highlights the strange, almost mystical significance some people attach to these old components.
That is. Yeah, that's a story. Wow. It underlines the fringe thinking in this area. Lander also mentions Marcello Bacci using an old valve radio.
Yeah, Bacci, an Italian researcher, used a World War II-era vacuum tube radio for over 40 years in his experiments. Lander says a group of spirit communicators supposedly gathered around his work, and people would visit him hoping to hear deceased relatives speak through the radio's sounds.
A dedicated group of spirits using an old radio. That's a very personal take on EVP. And Lander also points out a practical reason why these old tubes might still be relevant related to EMPs.
Right. He explains that vacuum tubes aren't knocked out by electromagnetic pulses, like from a nuclear blast. Unlike modern transistors and integrated circuits, which are really vulnerable, that's why tubes are still used in some military backup systems. It's a key difference.
Interesting. So tougher, maybe more open to certain influences, our delicate modern tech filters out. He brings up other figures, too, like Zelda Ederle and her psychophone scan.
Yeah, back in 1925, Zelda Ederle used a special wireless receiver for this psychophone scan. Lander describes it almost like a supernormal glyph device, supposedly connected to all of time at a quantum level, linking past, present, future.
A device connected to all of time. The scale of these ideas is just vast. And he found an old radio himself that had a hidden transmitter, like a spy device.
He did. An old shortwave valve radio with a secret transmitting circuit built in. He speculates it could have been used by spies during the war, or maybe afterwards, hinting again at this overlap between secret tech and the potentially paranormal.
Makes you wonder what hidden capabilities might be in everyday tech. Now, shifting slightly, he talks about radar development and this alleged link to psychic attacks in WWII. That sounds pretty wild.
It is a wild claim. According to one of Lander's contacts, the British Coastal Radar Network wasn't just for spotting planes and subs. The claim was it was also meant to ward off psychic attacks from alien spaceships that had supposedly come to help Nazi occultists.
Psychic attacks. Alien spaceships.
Yeah.
Nazi occultists. Okay, that's a
It's
lot.
okay.
It's definitely an extreme interpretation, showing the kinds of beliefs that can get attached to these phenomena. He also mentions Friedrich Jurgensen, a key EVP figure, and his early experiences.
Right. Lander notes that before Jurgensen started recording EVP on tape in 1959, he'd reported receiving messages about a central investigation station in space observing humanity. These friends, as Jurgensen called them, mentioned electromagnetic screens or radars acting as mental messengers.
So even the pioneers had these big cosmic ideas tied into it. It wasn't just hearing odd voices. Lander also mentions the Shingle Street incident and a weird Mexican radio station thing, linking them to ETs.
Yeah, the Shingle Street incident in '42 involved a sudden evacuation and rumors of strange burned bodies washing ashore. The Mexican radio thing in the '50s was a station boosting its power so much, people miles away supposedly heard it through their teeth fillings. Lander connects these to possible sudden telepathy, perhaps sponsored by unknown forces, maybe extraterrestrial.
Again, very strange events leading to speculation about off-world involvement. It seems once you start looking beyond the dial, the possibilities get pretty extraordinary. He even brings Uri Geller into it, linking him to tech and alleged alien control.
Lander mentions that during a monitored Geller demonstration, a metallic-sounding voice was recorded, though no one heard it live. And he also notes Geller's claim of being controlled by a robot computer called Spectra on a spaceship.
So the line between psychic ability and advanced tech gets really blurry in these accounts, like people claiming to be channels or even tools for intelligences using technology. Lander also looks back further at Marconi.
Guglielmo Marconi, the radio pioneer. In 1918-19, he apparently did secret experiments trying to contact other dimensions using very long radio waves. He claimed he received regular directed signals on a frequency much longer than anything used on Earth then, making him think they might be from another planet.
Marconi himself, thinking he was getting interplanetary signals, that's significant, suggests the idea isn't new. And early telegraphs recording weird stuff.
Yes, he notes stories of telegraph operators finding odd sentence fragments or geometric patterns recorded on the machines when no one was there, raising the question, could this have been very early, accidental EVP?
Unintentional contact. Intriguing. He then covers the invention of the phonograph disc and the first tape recorder. Crucial steps, obviously.
He highlights Berliner's flat disc in 1886 and Oberlin-Smith's 1888 recorder using steel dust on cotton string. These gave us the ability to capture and replay sound, which is fundamental to EVP work.
From steel dust on string to magnetic tape. Amazing how that tech evolved and became the tool for this West. He also connects Heinrich Hertz, demonstrating radio waves to the EVP community.
Right. Hertz proving electromagnetic waves existed in 1886 was key for EVP folks later on. It provided the scientific basis for wireless communication, opening the door to thinking about unseen signals carrying information.
So science discovers radio waves, and then others start exploring what else might be riding those waves. Lander even mentions an early idea for cosmic talk, using mirrors to signal Mars, before radio was common.
Yeah, Sir Francis Galton in 1896 proposed using huge mirrors to flash sunlight Morse code style at Mars. Shows the desire to connect was there long before the tech caught up.
The desire's always been there. Tech just gives us new ways to try. Now, Lander flags 1947 as a really significant year. Why 1947?
He lists a whole cluster of unusual things happening then. Aleister Crowley died. Kenneth Arnold had the first big modern UFO sighting, the first Men in Black encounter. The CIA was formed. Secret beast computers were perfected.
Wow, quite a year.
And importantly, sunspot activity hit a peak, the highest since radio's discovery. Lander suggests a link here. High sunspot activity might affect radio transmission in weird ways, maybe enhancing psychic abilities or making it easier to receive signals from space.
Like the universe itself opening a window for connection.
Yeah.
That's a bold idea. He also describes something called television picture phenomena. PKP, what's that?
TPP is when people supposedly fall asleep with the TV on, then wake up seeing strange images in the static: dinosaurs, faces, writing, weird landscapes, spaceships, maybe even glimpses of the future.
Visions in TV snow, like a modern form of scrying, almost. And the 1977 Southern television broadcast hijack.
Yeah, during a news broadcast, the audio was overridden by this calm male voice claiming to be Gramaha from the Ashtar Galactic Command, saying spaceships were watching Earth. Many called it a hoax, but Lander points out the technical skill needed was considerable, suggesting maybe it was more than just a prank.
A voice claiming to be Galactic Command interrupting TV. Definitely unsettling, whatever it was. Lander also mentions John Keel investigating mysterious numbers appearing on TV and heard telepathically during UFO flaps.
Keel reported numbers just showing up on TV screens during waves of UFO sightings and people hearing numbers in their heads. He connects this to number stations broadcasting coded messages on shortwave.
Like a hidden layer of coded communication, sometimes via tech, sometimes direct to mind. He even references Jean Cocteau's film Orphée.
Yeah, Lander suggests Cocteau's film, with its coded voice messages and number strings representing transmissions from the underworld, is like a surreal artistic echo of these real-world mysteries.
Art picking up on the same strange currents. Now, Klaus Schreiber's Vidicom technique for getting images on TV sounds complicated.
It was. It involved a video feedback loop, pointing a camera at a TV, recording that image to VCR, playing it back on the same TV. By tweaking things, he'd get patterns of light and then painstakingly review the recordings frame by frame, looking for images to emerge from the static, often resembling known photos.
An infinite video loop as a canvas? Very experimental. And he also brings up the theory that TV itself might be a tool for mass mind control. That's a heavy claim.
Lander mentions a patent by G. Hendrikus Luce about manipulating the nervous system via monitors, and research by Herbert Krugman on brainwave changes during TV viewing. The theory is the flickering images might create a hypnotic state, making people suggestible. He even quotes a supposed EVP, central to Adolf, only television.
The idea our TVs could be subtly messing with our minds. Chilling. He also talks about the resonant frequency of our skulls and cell phones.
Right. He points out our skull bones resonate around 840, 890 megahertz. That frequency range used to be for VHF TV, but now it's used by mobile phone networks. Raising the question, could cell signals somehow influence thoughts?
It's thought-provoking, linking everyday tech to potential mind effects. Lander even suggests a playful test for government monitoring.
Yeah, he jokingly suggests holding a CIA or MI5 sign up to the TV when someone on screen looks out, just to see if you get a reaction.
A bit tongue-in-cheek, maybe? But it captures that undercurrent of mystery and potential surveillance. Now, moving into even stranger territory, the Philadelphia experiment link to UFOs.
The claim, as Lander relays it, is that the USS Eldridge's supposed disappearance and reappearance in '43 ripped a hole in hyperspace, letting lots of aliens into our reality, leading to the 1947 UFO wave.
The Philadelphia experiment is hugely debated, and linking it to UFOs is specific. Shows how these mysteries get tangled together. Lander also touches on time travel theories involving magnetic fields.
He mentions T.C. Lethbridge and Dr. Morris K. Jessup's ideas about magnetic fields and time, and Tony Bassett's machines supposedly creating storm-like energy fields to encourage time travel, linking these to UFOs and time anomalies.
So maybe electromagnetism is the common thread linking EVP, UFOs, even time travel. A unified, though speculative theory? And Russian research on enhancing telepathy with magnetic fields.
He mentioned studies where Russian scientists apparently boosted telepathy using artificial magnetic fields, and anecdotes about engineers working near high-frequency machines having telepathic flashes.
Suggests manipulating EM fields might genuinely affect consciousness. Lander even recounts Hillary Evans seeing glowing orbs and figures near power lines.
Evans reported seeing blue spheres and even a hand-like shape forming near high-voltage gear, and a cloud over a turbine showing a woman on a couch, suggesting maybe powerful electrical fields create temporary reality glitches or energy displays.
Like rips in the fabric of reality caused by electricity. Lander even connects UFO imagery to the chariot card in the Thoth Tarot deck. Didn't expect that.
He points out the figure holds a spinning disc like a saucer, and the deck predates the modern UFO era, suggesting maybe it was precognition.
Ancient symbols, modern mysteries intersecting. He also discusses George Hunt Williamson and cosmic contacts.
Williamson worked on alleged ET communications and was involved with the Brotherhood of the Seven Rays. Lander describes characteristics of supposed agents controlled by space intelligences, glassy eyes, neck twitches, and how they're contacted. radio, telepathy, sightings.
So individuals as direct channels for space intelligences, often involving tech. And Hodorownik, detecting odd signals from the Milky Way.
Using a gravity wave detector, Hodorownik reportedly picked up weird audio signals from our galaxy, including something like Morse code for S that seemed unnatural.
Signals from our galaxy sounding like Morse widens the scope hugely. Now back to Jurgensen, the moment he realized the voices weren't just radio interference.
Initially, he dismissed them as stray broadcasts, but when they persisted, even seemed to respond to his thoughts, he knew it was something else. That led to his focused EVP research.
That must have been a pivotal moment. Lander also mentions Stella Lansing's Tweety Bird voices.
Lansing, who also took UFO photos, recorded these high-pitched voices that sounded like Morse or maybe synthesized speech. Lander also mentions Konstantin Radiv analyzing his pet budgie's chirps, believing they held messages from its dead owner.
Even birdsong, interpreted as contact, shows how wide the net was cast. Then Radiv's systematic research really kicked things off globally.
Yes, Radiv's book Breakthrough, with accompanying recordings, sparked huge international interest, leading to experiments by scientists and amateurs alike, even apparently at the Vatican.
The Vatican looking into EVP, that's significant. And the story about the chief exorcist and a radio being spat out during an exorcism.
It's a dramatic anecdote, yeah, highlighting the unsettling nature of some encounters. Lander also mentions Kenneth Shipman claiming radio contact with Venusians and key English researchers like Bonner and Cass.
So a growing community was exploring this, and contact with Venus via radio wasn't seen as totally bizarre. Andrew Thomas claimed TV signals from future ETs.
Thomas's claim in '74 was apparently the first public report of visual contact, moving beyond just audio.
The search kept evolving: radio, then TV. Now, George Meek and William O'Neill's Spiricom device sounds like a major leap.
Spiricom was designed for real-time, two-way audio chat with the deceased using modulated electromagnetic signals. A big step from just analyzing recordings later. It used sound and radio frequency generators to create a carrier wave spirits could supposedly impress their voice onto.
Real-time conversation, the holy grail of EVP. Lander even shares a bizarre personal experiment with Uri Geller and a tape recorder.
He describes putting a recorder between them and the record buttons pressing down by themselves. They listened on headphones, asked questions, heard an English voice reply. After transcribing it, the tape cassette just vanished from the machine.
A tape vanishing after a chat with an unseen force. Truly weird. And Hans Otto Koenig in Germany developed something similar independently.
Yes, Koenig created a system for direct electroacoustic voices using ultrasonic carriers, similar in concept to Spiricom, though maybe unaware of O'Neill's work.
Interesting how similar ideas pop up separately. Lander also recounts O'Neill's experiment with oscillators near a fish tank, with weird visual effects.
O'Neill mixed frequencies from two oscillators near an aquarium and saw swirling patterns, even tiny shapes like a hand and head forming in the water. Later, changing frequencies made him shake violently, making him wonder about X-rays or gamma rays.
Playing with frequencies, causing physical effects in water and on himself, highlights the power of EM fields. Now, quartz crystals Lander explores their potential role.
He talks about quartz being used spiritually, potentially storing psychic energy, maybe explaining ghost sightings during construction, vibrations releasing stored energy. He also mentions the piezoelectric effect, quartz generating electricity under pressure, and how that might be useful in EVP.
So, crystals as energy storage and potential communicators. He mentions Todmorden, England, a quartz-rich area with lots of weird phenomena.
Right. Todmorden reportedly has many unexplained lights, sounds, power outages, exploding bulbs, apparitions, even a vacuum cleaner replaying factory sounds, and Lander notes a high number of UFO sightings nearby.
The concentration of weirdness in a quartz area is suggestive, and we have crystals in our own bodies.
He points out crystals in the pineal gland and hypothalamus, suggesting they might act as internal receivers. Maybe using external crystals in experiments could boost that.
Natural receivers in us, amplified externally. Interesting. Then there's Fritz Junker's exotic audio archaeology theory. Sounds very original.
Jonker speculates that stones, being magnetic and ancient, could hold vast amounts of information, including past sounds. He even suggests electrons might record every sound in their spin forever, holding the universe's audio history.
The idea that reality itself records sound. Mind-blowing. And Richard Woodbridge III's acoustic archaeology.
Woodbridge thought sounds might get accidentally trapped in materials like pottery during making. He tried extracting basic noises from ancient pots.
The past imprinted on objects. Fascinating. Lander also mentions the controversial ancient info discs from China.
These alleged ancient stone discs supposedly had drawings and symbols, vibrated as if charged, and some claim they document ET landings millennia ago.
A persistent legend blending ancient history, tech, and ETs. And L. George Lawrence using biological materials and sensors to detect signals from space. Very unusual.
Lawrence built on others' work, using thin quartz slices combined with organic materials and sensors. He claimed to pick up signals from the sky, suggesting a bioelectronic detection method.
Biology and electronics combined. Hints at links between life and space signals. Lander even mentions Isao Kamida's Bermuda Triangle LP having hidden computer data.
Tamita deliberately encoded data as sound effects on the record, meant for computer decoding, shows how information can be hidden in plain sight within audio.
An example relevant to EVP's complexity. Now, Lander really stresses the experimenter's mind and belief being key.
Yes, he argues an open, receptive mind is more likely to get results than a skeptical, purely scientific one. Fixed beliefs can act as filters, blocking contact.
So it's not just the gear, it's the operator's mindset. He also discusses using natural sound sources.
Right, like radiostatic, white noise, water, wind, thunder. He notes discarnate entities often seem to use higher frequencies, even ultrasonic ranges, for speech.
Like they shape these raw sounds into voices. Now, the basic EVP recording method with a tape recorder, how does someone start?
Simple setup. Quiet place. Tape recorder. Ask questions or invite statements. Leave silent gaps for replies. Keep sessions short, maybe 10 minutes. And formally close the session, like saying goodbye.
Sounds straightforward enough to try. But then the listening back.
Yeah.
How do you analyze the recording?
Lander suggests tweaking treble and bass, listening at different speeds, slow down fast sounds, speed up slow growls, re-record interesting bits at high volume, maybe use filters or equalizers. Computers obviously offer more advanced analysis tools now.
So it's an active listening process, manipulating the audio to find hidden sounds. He mentions more advanced experimental methods too, like the far-out sound procedure and the subconscious shortwave signal control rate. Sound pretty out there.
Far-out sound is like ear training, closing eyes, focusing on breath, trying to hear faint, distant sounds. The control rate involves a copper helmet linked to a detuned shortwave radio, trying to mentally influence the static and receive messages through deep concentration, maybe trance.
Copper helmets and mind-controlled static. Definitely unconventional. Lander also talks about sleight of mind in paranormal investigation.
Yeah, the idea that acting as if something is real can sometimes trigger genuine phenomena, like faking seance movements that then become real, or weirdness around deliberately faked crop circles, like sympathetic magic.
Our expectations shaping reality, a common theme in occultism. He mentions other techniques too, recording behind the mirror, and more on Shriver's Vidicom.
Behind the mirror uses a microphone facing a mirror exposed to moonlight, trying to contact other dimensions. And Vidicom, as we said, is that video feedback loop for generating images on TV.
Different ways to try and bridge worlds, sound, images, reflections.
Yeah.
And the psychoelectroid dream recording experiment. Sounds intense.
It involves staying awake 24 hours, then sleeping with your head near a VCR, recording a detuned TV, hoping to capture predictive dreams, especially just before waking. He even suggests writing, "Am I recording this dream?" on your hand to trigger lucid dreaming for recording.
Sleep deprivation, tech, trying to record dreams, very direct attempt to tap into altered states. And circuit bending. More hands-on.
Yeah, deliberately short-circuiting low-voltage electronics toys, radios to create unpredictable sounds that might contain EVP. Even touching the circuits yourself can create sounds.
Creating chaos to find hidden order, maybe. He also describes audiomancy and videomancy for divination.
Audiomancy uses sound loops or static to induce trance, then finding answers in perceived voices or the first words heard on radio playback. Videomancy is a group thing, using a TV remote to randomly flip channels while focusing on a question and symbol interpreting the first image seen.
Using tech randomness combined with focused intent, like modern divination tools. Lander outlines more elaborate rituals too. The rite of the valve, the dish and the ball, and the vortex of Vril. Sound complex.
The rite of the valve uses symbolic objects, sounds, physical actions, and focus to expand awareness. The vortex of Vril is done high up, ideally in aircraft, involving inversion herbs, intense focus to go beyond normal perception.
Rituals bringing in magic and altered states. He even mentions William S. Burroughs using 3 radios, and Benowitz's alleged program for decoding alien signals.
Burroughs tried receiving voice messages with 3 radios. Benowitz claimed his computer program could decode alien transmissions and detect mind control implants. Lander warns that apparent alien telepathy might actually indicate an implant.
Highlights the complexity and potential paranoia in the field. Lander encourages checking out books for more detail and gives practical tips for recording EVP. What are the main ones?
Use version tapes. Turn off noise reduction and auto gain control. Prefer analog recorders if possible. The hiss can be useful. Use the tape towner. Start with mono recording via an external mic, maybe with mild AM static or just the mic alone. He mentions specific frequencies pioneers used, also parabolic or ultra-directional mics.
So pure capture, pay attention to background noise. He also suggests experiments near grasshoppers. That's specific.
Because of their high-frequency sounds, yeah. Also mentions the microwave band's use in various technologies.
Looking for interactions between nature, tech, and the phenomenon. Finally, he touches on magical considerations for experiments.
Consistency in setting and mood is important. Experiment at night, especially full moon. Create a conducive atmosphere with symbols and rituals like banishing rituals before and after sessions.
Setting the energetic stage is as crucial as the tech, and general characteristics of EVP voices messages.
They might use your name. Messages might be predictive. Voices usually heard only on playback, not registering on VU meters live. Often in your native tongue, but sometimes polyglot. Frequently very fast or slow, odd speech patterns. Get help analyzing unintelligible stuff. Stick with working methods unless guided otherwise. Be warned about negative entities test spirits by asking if they come in God's name or your concept of divinity.
A reminder, it's not just tech. There are potential interactions, so be cautious. Lander concludes by reiterating the fascination with using audio tech to contact beings beyond the dial, positioning his work as an intro to getting genuine EVP. Phew, quite a journey through Beyond the Dial.
It really has been. Lander offers a really wide-ranging look into this possibility of communication beyond our senses using technology.
Okay, so to wrap up this deep dive, we've seen EVP and ITC are about trying to communicate via technology. There are loads of theories about where it comes from, databases of the dead, our own minds projecting other dimensions.
And we've covered a ton of experiments and observations, often using surprisingly simple, everyday tech in really unconventional ways.
Exactly. And while, a lot of these ideas sound pretty strange, the fact that you can apparently explore some of this with basic gear makes the possibility of discovery kind of intriguing for anyone, doesn't it?
It does.
It really gets you thinking about, well, what is reality? Could there be these unseen, unheard worlds interacting with ours all the time through the very technology we use every day? Our radios, TVs, computers. Maybe they're not just tools for our world, but potential doorways.
That twilight interaction between electronics and the experimenting mind, as Lander puts it, that's the real core of the mystery, perhaps.
Maybe it is. And for you listening, if this has captured your imagination like it has ours, you might want to dig deeper into some of the people or experiments we mentioned. Or, maybe even try that basic EVP recording method yourself, just to see.
Just out of curiosity.
Yeah. This has been a fascinating deep dive, uncovering some really surprising ideas from Beyond the Dial. Thanks for joining us.
I would have been on top of the charts, but it's politics. You do some gimmick shit and post, you get a lot of clicks. Drop some real shit and they probably won't acknowledge you.